Do people just not know how to dive, or are they like scared to dive? Because if I was jumping off a tall platform into water and I needed to go forward, I would dive.
I think it is a combination of either not knowing how to dive or not being confident in their ability to dive.
Do you know how to
because
dive?
it's a tall platform? I do, but I don't swim enough to like I'm not just going out swimming. I don't know the last time I went swimming. I'm not going to lie. I don't swim often. I don't get in the water. Like, I don't do that. That's just not a hobby of mine.
I mean, it's not a hobby of mine either, but I have been in the water in the last year.
I have not.
Oh.
So I know how to dive, but like I learned as a kid, right? And so I know how to do it, but in my current adult body, do I know how to dive? I don't know if I would be confident enough to do that. And so would I be afraid of ending up belly flopping or flipping over on national television? I think that's probably the thought through most people's head. Welcome to the Idle Talk podcast. My name's Peyton, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Jacob. This week, we are talking about the penultimate episode of Survivor 47. It is episode 13, which would normally be the finale, but this season we get a two-part finale, where the finale is broken up into two hour-long episodes. So 4 hours of content, not really with commercials and everything, but it's a lot. And this week we had 2 tribal councils, so we're going to break that all down, talk about the final 4 going into next week's actual finale. Right now is your spoiler warning. If you have not seen episode 13 of Survivor 47, you've been warned. Jacob, we have a lot to cover with not a lot of time. Really, this is 2 episodes in one. And so normally I would say, what did you think of the episode? But I don't know if that's the best way to start this. So maybe the better way is, did things go down the way you thought they would? Or were you surprised last night?
Honestly, I think the only thing that I was surprised about was Andy going out at, 6?
Yes.
I thought Andy would at least be a final tribal council loser. I didn't expect him to go out at 6. I know his threat level was raised pretty high and stuff like that after Operation Italy, but I think that was probably the biggest shocker to me, was Andy going home at 6. Just with how much of a main character he's been this season and how heavily he's been featured in the edit, 6th place just felt a little low, in my opinion. So I think that was the only like major shocker for me from this 2-hour episode.
I agree. I mentioned it before where I didn't think it was out of the realm of possibility where Andy could be the one not making it into the final 3 and going a little bit earlier, but it felt like it would be weird given everything we'd seen up to this point in the season. So it was definitely surprising. I think what was most surprising was the way that it happened, though. And I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more here in the episode, but it was ultimately Andy's fault that he went home. He very well, like, it should have been Sam, and it would have been Sam if not for Andy's own hubris. And he ultimately is the reason that he ended up on the jury. Now, there's you could get into a lot of speculation about if he had not tried to preemptively jury manage and say Rachel didn't have an idol, and he made it to the end. Like, there's a lot of scenarios going around about whether that was the right move or not, given what he knew, because we're seeing it from an outside point of view. But given the way things played out, it clearly was his own fault that he went home.
Yeah. I understand why Andy went home, but in my opinion, I think we're going to talk about this, how we both think Rachel is kind of a lock to win pretty much, but I think Sam, if he's sitting in final 3 with Rachel, has a higher chance of taking away votes from her than Andy does.
I disagree.
You disagree?
Yeah, I think Andy has an actual argument,
but
whereas Sam doesn't.
But
Sam
the jury, it's so clear that the jury does not respect him at all.
Sure, they don't like Andy, but Andy has actually done things in the game. Sam hasn't done anything. And so I don't think Sam would get, Sam might get some pity votes.
I mean, he's not going to get pity votes. I think he is likely to get Sierra's vote. I think he's likely to get Genevieve's vote. Those,
yeah, they are votes from allies.
Yeah, but I'm saying Andy, I don't think is a lock to get a single vote.
I wouldn't say Andy was ever a lock to get votes because of the way he played his game. It is, we're drawing a comparison again to Russell Hantz, but it could have very well played out like Russell if he made it to the end where he just doesn't get any votes. Nobody likes him. And so it goes to someone else. He didn't play the game in the same way, though, where he was...
No, he wasn't playing in the sense that he was treating people like garbage and just treating them as like chess pieces. But it was very clear, like, whenever they pulled off Operation Italy and Sol had the comment of, oh, Andy flipped again, and everyone was very, I guess, put off by that. And then in the next tribal council, when Rachel calls him out on it, the entire jury is like, yeah, like, get him, essentially.
I agree. I think, though, in a final 3, Andy is able to explain how Operation Italy went down, and in that scenario is going to be able to win votes in a better way than Sam is.
I just think it depends on whether it would. We're grasping at straws here on a hypothetical that's not happening.
It doesn't matter. But I do think that Sam has sort of been brought along for the ride this whole time, where he's just been there. He's been on the bottom. He hasn't had the opportunity to make moves, really. But also, I think the chances that he had were like when he had this moment of trust with Rachel earlier, where Rachel told him the plan about the Genevieve vote. And then he went and told, and then everything went crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And he broke that trust with Rachel, like in that moment. And it ultimately didn't change anything and, resulted in Saul going home. That vote. If Sam would have just not said anything and built trust with Rachel, I think that he would have been in a position to actually play the game. And so, I think there were plenty of times like that where Sam has been in a position to build relationships with people other than just Sierra, like Andy, for instance, but he always took Andy for granted, and other players where the relationship was kind of out of convenience. I think he put himself on the bottom and then survived his way to the end, which it's impressive that he's made it as far as he has, given that he's not had an ally until Genevieve, really, since Sierra. But I still think it's his own fault. And so I don't think that Sam really has any real case to make to the jury other than the Annika vote. But that goes a bit more towards Sierra, and no one saw that. So I don't think he has anything going for his game at all. And so I think Rachel made the right move in sending Andy out, because Andy was the only actual competition at that point, other than Genevieve, who was immune.
Yeah.
I guess while we're talking about this first half of the episode, we've already kind of talked about how it ends, but one really interesting thing that happens in there that I wanted to talk about just a little bit is Rachel's Spy Shack moment, where she crawls around in the dark, hides in a bush, and listens to Teeny, Sam, Genevieve, and Andy talk about her. And they have this conversation, and she eavesdrops on them. And I thought that was a really interesting sequence. It was very, I think, smart on her part. High risk, high reward scenario. I'm curious kind of what you thought of it, but then I also wanted to talk about a point that Charlie made in On Fire about that as well.
Well, do you want to bring up what the point was first?
Well, yeah, we can talk about that. I wanted to see what you thought about the moment first, and then talk about what Charlie said.
I mean, I thought it was cool I feel like that doesn't really happen much anymore. Like spying on people doesn't really happen much anymore.
I feel like it should. I feel like you would see that sort of thing more. Like sneak. If it's really that dark, I'm surprised because people go off in the dark and talk all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised people don't sneak off in the dark more often.
I guess it's more of a fear of getting caught. I mean, that would deter me from wanting to do it probably because I'm not like a super sneaky person.
Yeah, but if you play scared, you can't win.
No, I know.
That's why Tony's won twice.
Yeah, it is.
So the interesting thing that Charlie said was that like Rachel was there and she was getting all this good intel, but she's also getting bad intel and she's taking it all as truth. And so it ended up being a bit of a double-edged sword where because she heard Genevieve talking about her quote-unquote idol to Teeny, because Teeny was there in the conversation and Teeny didn't know it was fake, that really solidified for Rachel that it was a real idol. And that carries through all the way to the end of this episode where Rachel makes really her first big wrong move of the game in being on the wrong side of the vote for Genevieve.
No, she voted for Genevieve.
I didn't think she did. I thought she voted for Sam.
No, Teeny voted for Sam.
Oh, Teeny was?
Mm-hmm.
So she did ultimately switch over. She was very apprehensive to vote for Genevieve and was pretty adamant that it was real for a very long time. I thought she was the one that threw the vote towards Sam.
I was gonna say something that I kind of want to talk about. That kind of bounces off your point. A lot of people are saying that Rachel is playing a really, really good game, and I agree that she has had a lot of strong moments. And I think that if she wins, she will still be a really good and solid winner, and I think is probably one of the best players this season, if not the best player this season. But I think that she has had a lot of missteps in this season in terms of she has been on the wrong side of the vote a lot of times, and she has been blindsided a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you look at D in 45, basically every person that she said that she wanted out got out. I don't think D was ever on the wrong side of the vote once.
Yeah, I think though that is a difference of circumstance, because D was in Ariba 4 Power Alliance and Rachel was in an alliance of 1.
I do think
until the very end.
I do think she's had a very impressive game from the bottom and has had a very good scrappy game because of how she has won crucial individual immunities, found an idol at the most crucial time.
Kind of found.
Like I'm saying,
was given.
Yeah. But was able to save it and play it when she actually needed it. Yeah. So I think, and I think that female players tend to not get a lot of credit for scrappy gameplay that male players tend to get. I feel like Jeremy in Second Chance has a really similar gameplay to Rachel in terms of winning crucial immunities and playing from the bottom and stuff like that. So I do think she has a very, very solid game, and it's different circumstances than D, obviously, but she has been blindsided a lot this season.
Yeah, it is unusual for someone who we expect to be the winner. I guess we can go out and say that here. That's no surprise. that we expect Rachel to be winning this thing. We'll talk about it at the end, I'm sure, where we'll break down all 4 of these players, but Rachel seems like the winner at this point. But it is very unusual for the winner of the season to have really been wrong so much. But the edit kind of has shielded her a lot, even in spite of that, which in hindsight does help her case for winning, and is something that some astute people were kind of clocking earlier, but nobody was really buying it that much. But even when she was on the wrong side of the vote, it was never cutting to her confessional as being the one of like, oh man, I was bamboozled sort of thing. It was like, we're going to cut to Teeny as being the one who was clueless and bamboozled, not Rachel. And so that's sort of like the case for Teeny can't win, because Teeny's been portrayed as being absolutely lost and clueless the whole game, and you're not going to make that your winner.
Mm-hmm.
And so Rachel has, up until this point, never been shown as being out of the loop on something or being wrong about something, even though she has been multiple times. Really, the Annika one is kind of the only one that's pre-merge, and that was her ally, and we knew it was going to go one way or the other. It just all hinged on Andy. So I think that in spite of her being on the wrong side, the edit has kind of concealed that in a way that it hasn't impacted her odds of winning from an edit perspective. But also, I agree with you, it is very rare that we have a winner who is, like you said, kind of scrappy. I think Erica is kind of a similar one, who is a bit of this sort of underdog player who kind of snuck her way to the end and played a low-key game. But Erica was making bigger strategic moves. And then I think Marianne is also a pretty good one, who was an under-the-radar sort of player, but she also had strong alliances that carried her pretty far into the game too. So especially in the new era, there's not really been a player like Rachel in terms of how far she's gotten without a safety net.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to talk about the first half of the episode, or Andy? Really anything relating to basically the first episode in this double episode?
Not really, other than I honestly, I think Andy had a really good character arc this season and really proved himself to actually be a pretty solid Survivor player, from having one of the most catastrophic starts ever of any Survivor player ever to making it pretty deep in the game. It's very, very impressive to see. And he was really good TV. He was great entertainment. And I would not be mad if he returned for season 50 at all.
And I'm surprised to hear that, because after episode 1, you would not have expected to hear you say that.
Yeah, this is true.
You really didn't like Andy. And after episode 1, we thought Andy was gone the next week. We didn't like him. We were like, oh, get this man off our screen. So he's definitely come a long way. And that's really impressive. So yeah, I agree. I think Andy really turned it around. After Andy leaves, we're left with our final 5.
And what a final 5 this is.
Yeah.
It's crazy. If you had just given me this season's lineup, I think I would have chosen Sam to be in the final 5, and that was it.
Actually, if we're saying preseason final 5 picks, Genevieve wouldn't have been there.
And Rachel wouldn't have been there.
But we might have put Teeny and Sue there. They were so highly visible in the preseason stuff that it wouldn't have been crazy to pick them. And so, like, that's why I wanted both of them on my team. I don't think either of them are winning, but I was right in thinking that they were going to do well. Like, I think we clocked that correctly. They just weren't strong players. They just kind of made it to the end. So
yeah. I will say, even though I think Sue has like a virtually zero chance of winning the game, I do want to acknowledge how extremely impressive it is for a 59-year-old woman to be in the Final Four. Like, that's not easy at all.
Yeah, it is for sure. And the fact that she has been able to, she won an individual immunity challenge. Very impressive. She has maintained good relationships out there with people.
Yeah, because I feel like you either just get branded as the mom or you come off as really abrasive. So, and she didn't really play into the mom card at all, which I really appreciated from her to have, where she's just playing as herself. I mean, she's lying about her age, but she's just playing who she is, and she's not trying to like lean into the mom role or anything like that. And I think that's a more unique take, because the most recent older woman who made a deeper run was Julie, and Julie,
Mama Julie.
Yeah, she heavily played into the Mama
J.
card.
Yeah, before the season, we would have probably guessed like, okay, she's going to be Mama Sue. Like that's just going to happen. You know, that almost always happens.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will say, yeah, I agree with you 100%. There was the one, I guess, the relationship with her and Caroline is a sort of a mother-daughter relationship.
Yeah,
that they compared that to, but I think that just was a very strong alliance that the two of them formed.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that Sue formed alliances with other players and was able to form alliances even after her number one was voted out is really impressive, in the fact that it shows that she was really adaptable, because we see a lot of times older players tend to not be as adaptable in the game, and that's where they struggle. If they lose their number one ally, they freak out, they don't know what to do, and they panic. And Sue lost Gabe and then was okay, and then ended up getting out Kyle, and then lost Caroline and then was okay and got Rachel as an ally. And so Sue has continued to be strong in the game, at least relationally, and still relatively competitive physically too. So I think it's worth acknowledging and applauding.
Mm-hmm. I also think it's entirely possible that she could get votes at Final Tribal from her allies in Gabe and Caroline, and especially emphasizing.
I think she very well could get a vote or two.
And like if she lays heavily into the loyalty card, that could go a long way.
Yeah, I think she's more like. I don't know actually if she's more likely to get a vote from Gabe or not. Because I would think Caroline is most likely to vote analytically than just relationally. So I would think Caroline would be most likely to vote Rachel. So, but I also don't know if Gabe was ever like that close with Sue, or if it was a relationship out of convenience for Gabe. So it's hard to gauge there. But I do think there's a world where Sue garners some votes.
Mm-hmm.
In the second half episode, where we have this final five, it starts off with them basically doing this. They literally say this island isn't big enough for the both of us.
Mm-hmm.
And they go through this whole montage of them not being able to coexist with one another. And I think it's pretty interesting that they, from the beginning of the merge, Genevieve clocked Rachel as being a threat and has wanted Rachel out, and Rachel's ultimately the one that sends Genevieve home, keeping her from Final Four. It's kind of poetic.
Mm-hmm.
If Genevieve just could have got her out in one of the last, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 votes, it would have been okay.
Yeah. I still, even if there was a world where Rachel and Genevieve both made it to final tribal council, I don't know if Genevieve edges out Rachel. Like looking, it's hard to say because they made the edit focused around Genevieve going out at 5. So I don't know how they would.
You can't look at the edit.
Yeah.
You have to look purely at the game and the people sitting on the jury.
Yeah.
I think it would be very close.
I think it would probably either be a tie or it would be a 5-3 because you have to think about who is the third person sitting with them because they're going to be
that's going to be a big factor if it's
because like if Sam's in the jury, he's obviously giving Genevieve his vote.
If Sue's on the jury, Sue's voting
Rachel
for Rachel.
And then
if
I think
Teeny's there, Teeny's a swing vote potentially.
Yeah.
I think Teeny would ultimately go for Genevieve, though, probably. Unless Genevieve did some backstabbing to get Teeny there or something.
Yeah. But honestly, I feel like in terms of having control over the game, Genevieve has done a better job of that.
Yes. And has been highly visible at it. People have known Genevieve is a threat for multiple tribals now.
Since the soul vote.
Yes. And it's been to a point where they've just kind of kept Genevieve around and let Genevieve be in control for a while. So I think if Genevieve's sitting there, I think Genevieve wins.
It's very impressive. Honestly, it's very impressive she made it as far as she did with her threat level.
I'm very surprised that they voted that they wanted Kyle out before Genevieve, that they wanted Gabe out before Genevieve, that they wanted Caroline out before Genevieve, that any of those three were higher on the threat scale than Genevieve. Because I would have rather get out Genevieve first. Granted, her threat level grew more and more with each of those votes going her way, but I didn't see any of them being potential winners at the point in which they were voted out.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Genevieve always seemed like a very having the potential to win.
Yeah, I agree.
The immunity challenge that we have in the second half was very stressful.
Mm-hmm.
It's the stacking balls and base and ball, and then the base and the ball and the base until your tower gets all the way up, and then you're doing it on this balance beam that has a spring.
Have they done this before? They may have, and I don't think I've seen a season where they've done it before.
Ghost Island, it was done at Final 4 or because if that season went down to 2, I think then it was at Final 4. They talked about it in On Fire, but it was a showdown with Wendell and Dom.
Oh, okay, yeah, I remember.
But so that was it played out basically the exact same, and this was it's kind of crazy how dominant Genevieve and Rachel have been at these like challenges. Where it's been the two of them duking it out.
It's and how I don't understand
unclose.
I was about to say
Sam, Sue, and Teeny have been.
Sam being a challenge loser is the biggest shocker to me.
He's a theater kid, man.
I know, but he works in sports reporting. You'd think he'd be generally athletic if he's around sports.
He reports on sports. He doesn't do sports.
But he looks physical.
Yeah, you can look physical and not be physical. He's just not that athletic, I guess. Granted, this wasn't an athletic challenge. This was a balance challenge, but even the athletic ones, he's not the fast. I mean, he was pretty fast at the first leg of the challenge that sent Andy home, that Genevieve won, but he stalled out on the puzzle. Absolutely had no shot there because Genevieve and Rachel just mopped the floor with them on that part. And so
I want to go on Survivor so bad. Not even like all the other stuff aside. I just want to see if I could actually win an individual immunity challenge. Like, am I as good in my head as I think I am? Because I feel like I'd be really good at puzzles. Like, legit, I think I'd be really good at puzzles.
Well, you can just 3D print yourself some puzzles.
No, I know, but that's not the same.
Sure it is.
But
Or just print out some templates and then go cut them out of wood, and then voila, now you have wooden puzzles.
No, I know,
or
but I'm saying
hit up Hunter, and go volunteer at his camp for the kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, help the kids and try out the challenges while you're there. Just do a little sneaky challenge attempt.
But like that, if I was on Survivor, that's what I would be looking forward to most, is doing the challenges.
Just seeing how well you do.
Mm-hmm.
Getting covered in mud.
Yeah.
And dirt and dust and sawdust. And
Can we also talk about how when the challenge started and they all jumped into the water, this was for the first challenge, like the first challenge of the episode, not the cup one. When they all dove into the water, or they like jumped into the water, Sue was like professional dive. All the rest of them just like jumped, and then Sue like full on dove.
Yeah, perfect 10 out of 10 Olympic dive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There was a tweet going out about it before the episode because there was like a clip or something going around. And so people were posting about that online, about her like perfect dive.
Which makes me wonder, why don't more people, because I would have dove in that situation. Do people just not know how to dive, or are they like scared to dive, or do they just think like, why? Because if I was jumping off a tall platform into water and I needed to go forward, I would dive.
I think it is a combination of either not knowing how to dive or not being confident in their ability to dive.
Do you know how to
because
dive?
It's a tall platform? I do, but I don't swim enough to like I'm not just going out swimming. I don't know the last time I went swimming. I'm not gonna lie. I don't swim often. I don't get in the water. Like, I don't do that. That's just not a hobby of mine.
I mean, it's not a hobby of mine either, but I have been in the water in the last year.
I have not.
Oh.
So I have not been submerged in water in probably a couple of years. I don't know when the last time was.
Okay.
The last time I swam may have been when we went...
Oh, to the lake?
Yes.
Oh. Back in 2020?
Yes.
Oh my
4
gosh.
years ago. That may have been the last time. But so I know how to dive, but like I learned as a kid, right? And so I know how to do it, but in my current adult body, do I know how to dive? I don't know if I would be confident enough to do that. And so would I be afraid of ending up belly flopping or flipping over on national television? I think that's probably the thought through most people's head. Whereas it's probably just easier to just jump in and then swim and just try to get as far out as you can. I imagine that is probably the thought. Or just not knowing how to dive.
I'm shocked at the amount of people who don't know how to dive. I thought that was just common knowledge.
I think that you are unaware of how many people do not live in Florida or near the ocean.
I know.
Or grow up with a swimming pool. So there are a lot of people who don't swim, or don't swim often, or don't learn how to swim until they're an adult, or like I think you'd be surprised how few people know how to dive. But I would say, if you're going on Survivor, I would imagine learning how to dive is one of those things that should be on your list. Even if it's not very good.
Was there someone last season? Was it last season who learned how to swim to go on Survivor? Was that last season, or was it this season?
It was a recent season.
I think it was last. Was it Ben?
No,
I thought it was last. I thought it was last season.
I think it was last season, but it was. Oh.
No. It was, or was it Mariah? For some reason, I'm pretty sure it was Mariah.
Was it?
Yeah, because remember there was that one immunity challenge where they had to jump off the dock, and they were all practicing how to like jump into the water.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Yes. So yeah, it's kind of crazy that there are people that go out there they get on the show fully not knowing how to swim, and they're all right, now I'm going to learn how to swim.
And also swimming in the ocean is way harder than swimming in a pool.
Yes. I imagine where they're swimming in Fiji in those challenges, they're doing it in probably a bay where it's not as bad, but it is still very different. And it's deep.
Mm-hmm.
There's no...
You can't touch the bottom.
You're treading water, so you got to get really good at that. And so, yeah, it's a whole different ball game. Any other things about swimming you want to discuss before we move on?
No.
Okay. One of the big things in the second part that I would like to discuss before we talk about Genevieve's game ending is the debate about whether or not her idol is real, and how Sam telling Teeny that it's fake makes people think that it's real even more.
It's so funny how the perception of people out there, because I mean it's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard to put yourself in someone else's shoes, because I mean obviously as the viewer it's like, how can you believe that it's real? But when you're out there, I'm sure that it's hard to be convinced especially once you, and especially in Rachel's case where she's eavesdropping on this conversation, that she would think that in that moment Sam and Genevieve have no reason to lie, and there's no reason that Rachel should be under the assumption that they are lying. So, and then also egged on by the fact that it's obviously going to be Sam or Genevieve. So it can be taken as Sam, either A, Sam trying to do whatever he can to try to not get voted out, or B, Sam and Genevieve having another plan hatched up to get someone else out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing that so like, Sue ultimately ends up believing Sam. And I assume that Sue believes Sam because she has an idol herself. And so she's doing the math and is like, all right, Rachel just played an idol and I have an idol. There's no shot that Genevieve has that her idol's real, if we're hearing this from Sam. And so she was willing to risk it and call BS. And also she knew she was safe. So she was kind of just, I don't really care. But why, if I'm Sue in this scenario, why would you not tell Rachel that you have an idol?
Yeah, I think she should have in that scenario.
Because if you want to ensure that Rachel votes with you, you didn't tell her the vote before, which I think was smart. You know, you can keep that to yourself, let Rachel play hers, do that whole thing. But now this one, you're playing it tonight. There's no repercussions after this vote because you have to play it tonight. So you go ahead, you tell Rachel, you say, hey, I have an idol. You just played an idol. There's no shot that she has another idol. And if she does, that's wild. Especially
if it was revealed that Genevieve found hers at the reward. It may have been different if Genevieve had said that she had been holding on to it since the Lavo Beach.
Yes, that would have been different.
But Genevieve said that she found it at the family letter reward. If I was Rachel, I would have been like, well, obviously Survivor can change all the time, but
yes,
based on Survivor history, there's only one idol per beach. There's an idol on each tribe's beach, and then there's usually a merged idol. That's kind of the trend that it follows. So if I found the merged idol, I would find it highly unlikely that they would put another one out at the merged the merged beach.
it would be such a power imbalance at this point in the game that the second Genevieve said that she found it at that reward, I would have, like, Teeny even was like, what? Where did you find it at the reward? She said, under a slice of pizza. And Teeny said, what? And then Teeny ended up believing it and just going along with it. But you could tell Teeny was running the numbers in her head and I think Teeny was more confused as to why in the world Jeff would do such a thing and not believing that Genevieve lied.
Mm-hmm.
I think Teeny was just baffled at Jeff.
Yeah.
Because it would be absolutely insane to give out an idol at that point. It was already insane to give an idol at the point in the game where Rachel received it, I think. I think that feels even borderline late to just give an idol.
Mm-hmm.
Have an idol hidden, okay, I think we're fine still. But to just literally hand it to someone, crazy.
Yeah. I think, honestly, this season brings up a lot of how much luck plays into Survivor. Because in all honesty, Rachel has been very, very lucky many times. And I think her win can be heavily attributed to, a large portion can be attributed to luck, because she got saved by Saul. And in part, it is her being able to have built a relationship with Saul so that Saul feels so inclined to use it on Rachel. But I don't think it's that big of a nod towards Rachel's social game, because of how their split shook down, where she was with all Tuku. And I think if anybody had found that advantage, they would have given it to Rachel. Literally anybody. So I don't think it's that much of a nod to her social game. Because I've seen people say, oh, well, Rachel just has an insane social game because she built a relationship with Saul to where he wanted to save her. And I'm like, no, they just wanted to get rid of Atuku, so any of them would have saved Rachel.
Yeah.
And so
she was the obvious save in that scenario.
Yeah. So, like, luck instance number one, and then finding the advantage or finding the clue to an idol in her auction food. Luck.
Which, that one, people are going to be if they haven't already, people are going to be speculating and conspiracy theorizing that, because this is a whole other conversation potentially, but the way the auction works now,
it could be placed. It could be planted.
You could choose who gets the advantage.
Yeah.
Because it's just going to go to whoever has the most money.
Yeah, because if you think about it, if you have, like, if you're going to place it in the sixth item, then you can relatively assume that the person who has the sixth place amount of money is going to get that advantage.
Yeah, well, that gets thrown off a little bit by them bringing in these only $200 or
like
the
first
cashback
to give it,
and the, like, grub challenge. So they shook that part up. But I'm saying more so they can be sitting there watching the money totals, and I don't think Survivor's doing this.
You're saying,
but
they
if
they
there's
give
a
Jeff...
player if there's a player that they want to receive an advantage, they could then place the advantage on it before they pass it to Jeff, knowing that the person with the most money is who they want to receive this, because the likelihood that they receive it is very high. I do not think that is happening.
I don't either.
That very clear, but I guarantee you that there are going to be people who do not like Rachel as a winner, and they will make that as a claim.
Yeah. I mean, I think, obviously, I think Survivor and Jeff has the utmost integrity in terms of respecting the game. So
and
I don't
they
think...
said intentionally that they hid it in the fries, and, like, that was supposed to be, like, it went with that reward. So
yeah.
And I think they have a set order for those things.
Yeah, I don't doubt the integrity of the game at all, but I do see how someone could argue it. But I mean, I think we talked about it at length. I don't love it when the advantages are like that. in the sense that it's just luck of the draw. So luck instance number 2, and then Rachel getting to go on a journey because she got luck of the draw of she drew the rock to go on the journey. Granted, she did
at final 8.
Yeah. And granted, she did have to compete in a little challenge in order to get it. So she did earn that aspect.
And she was, in doing that, there was the possible flip scenario where she would have lost her vote.
Yes. But I just don't think they shouldn't have done a journey at 8 anyways. That was stupid.
I agree.
But anyways, I think this season really begs the question of how much is too much interference from production and how much is too much randomness and luck in the game of Survivor, and where is the line drawn?
Yeah, that's always going to be the question, and is always going to be the line that is walked. I think that luck plays very heavily into the game of Survivor always. And I think that you could pick apart any winner's game and pull out plenty of examples of where luck played a part. Does Rachel have more than average? Potentially. Are Rachel's more prominent than average? Probably. But I think luck is a part of the game. I think there is an element. Maybe luck isn't the best way to say it. Maybe chance is the more gamesman way to say it, but there's always going to be an element of chance to Survivor. That's part of what makes it a game. You know, if you are deadlocked in a vote, it goes to rocks. There's this element of chance. Final 4, it comes down to fire. And sure, there's skill in fire, but there's a chance that it's really windy. And there's a chance that you aren't able to perform as well as you normally would given the circumstances, even if you are really good at fire. And so there's always a lot of factors. There's also the element of, we talked about this before, where the tribe that you're sorted to at the beginning plays a huge impact on whether you make it to the end. There are players that are voted out pre-merge that if they made it to the merge, I think they would win. But because of the hand that they're dealt early, they don't make it in to the merge. We never see them again. That's chance. That's the way things happen. And unfortunately, that's kind of Survivor. And what makes someone a winner is their ability to capitalize on the opportunities that come their way and to be able to navigate the things that don't go their way. And I think Rachel has done both. There have been plenty of times this season where luck has gone in the favor of other people and things have gone not Rachel's way, and she has circumnavigated those very well, managed to keep her threat level down and sneak her way to the end. But she's also taken risks when needed and taken advantage of the opportunities that are presented to her. So final vote was a 3-2 vote. 3 votes on Genevieve, 2 on Sam. And Sue plays her idol for herself, which we'll talk about in a little bit when we talk about all 4 of the finalists. So Sue can't leave here. Rachel is immune, obviously. And I guess, the deciding vote here was Rachel on who goes home.
Mm-hmm.
Where Rachel could have very easily, if Rachel had voted, because Teeny voted Sam.
Mm-hmm.
If Rachel had voted Sam not being convinced of Genevieve's plot, then if Rachel got cold feet there at the very end, Genevieve would have stayed. So I'm really surprised that Teeny threw the one on Sam just in case. If we already knew Genevieve was throwing one on Sam. I don't understand Teeny's logic.
I guess maybe they weren't 100% convinced that Genevieve and Sam were actually going against each other, and they thought that them two might put 2 votes on someone, and
yeah, I guess in the off chance that they both loaded up on Sue or Teeny.
Yeah.
Throwing a hanky one over on Sam just in case. But in that scenario, then you definitely lose because now it's 1-1-2.
No.
Right?
It's
or no
2-2-1. It would be 2-2-1,
Wait,
and then you'd revote, and then Sam would go home. Or Genevieve would go home. Like if
I'm forgetting Sue's vote. Yeah.
I mean, if her idol was real, then yes, the Sam and whoever Sam and Genevieve wanted to get out would be gone. There's kind of no way around that.
Yeah, the way this all played out was very chaotic and very confusing. And honestly, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but I feel like fake idols are usually really stupid in Survivor.
Yeah, this is the first time.
This is the most effective one I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, this is definitely bar the fake idol in Gabon, which I don't know if you've seen that.
We talked about. I've seen bits and pieces of it, but I haven't watched the whole season through.
Yeah, there's a fake idol play in Gabon that's pretty iconic, but it's not even iconic for it.
Is it someone was given a fake idol?
Yes.
Yeah. So there are those moments where someone has an idol that they think is real and it's actually fake, which those can be hit or miss. But I feel like there's never really been, not that I can remember, a moment where someone has pretended to have an idol.
I think what really,
and it's been convincing.
I think what really sold it was Teeny's cluelessness. Because Teeny got the idol flashed at her, and then Teeny freaked out and told Rachel and Sue and Caroline that Genevieve had an idol, and they had no reason to not believe Teeny.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's what really, really sold it. And then also Genevieve's comment at Tribal, or Sam and Genevieve's little interaction when the votes were about to get read, and Sam
their
was
little
like,
theater moment.
Yeah, and Sam was like, play it. And Genevieve was like, no, I'll be fine. Like, I'm fine with the outcome. So I think those two are the biggest things that sold it.
I think those did. And then also just the paranoia of being out there and the how on edge they are about, like, Sam going and saying that it's fake, and how manipulative the duo of them have been. They can't trust anything coming from those two, that it just sowed even more confusion. And so I think it all lined up so perfectly for it to be the most perfect possible smokescreen, where if there was ever a chance for a fake idol to work and literally protect someone, this was the opportunity where it could have saved her and votes have gone towards Sam. I mean, Sam did get votes technically, but it was, I think that it was probably very, very close to Sam being the one going home, because she said she had an idol, which is wild when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that even though the fake idol idea was Andy's, Genevieve is the one who is selling it and selling it and selling it.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think most of that credit after the concocting the idea and really that first day of the three of them selling it together, the credit goes to Genevieve. And I think that if once, I think after the finale next week, we can maybe think through amending our picks for like season 50 and say, okay, who from this season would we pull in there?
Yeah.
And I think Genevieve feels like a lock.
Oh yeah. She's probably my favorite from this season. I think she's super charismatic, a great narrator and a great storyteller, amazing Survivor player. And so
I'm so annoyed that she was overshadowed by Rome for so much of the game.
Me too. especially with how far she made it and how much of a pulse she had on the game. I'm so shocked that her early on edit was so bleak. It honestly makes me kind of upset that we missed out on her for so long.
Yeah, the fact that she had 3 confessionals in the first 3 episodes and Rome had 21.
Yeah.
In that same span is a bit ridiculous. And obviously, like, Rome was just dominating the screen and was doing so much crazy stuff, but she was his number 1 ally. It's really rare for that to be the case, especially given that she's going to be so strong in the end of the game. If she had had a halfway decent first couple of episodes, and like if she didn't even have that 0 bomb, maybe if she just had like 2 confessionals in each of those, we probably would have had her as our winner pick for most of the season, because she felt pretty strong, but it just seemed like the edit didn't support her winning because of how little attention she got. And so I wish we could have seen more of her, because I do think we've talked about this a good bit, where this season has felt like, as a collective among the cast, it feels like it doesn't have as many emotionally resonant characters compared to previous seasons. I think that Genevieve is by far the most complex character here, the most interesting player, and is the one that I want to see more of.
I agree.
Anyone.
I agree very much.
She has so much going on where it's like she's kind of like this player where she's like a good guy who's forced to be a bad guy and doesn't want to be a bad guy, and it hurts her to be a bad guy, but that's what she has to do to survive. You know, it's like someone who is forced into a life of crime, and they have to be, you know, they've got to rob banks, and they really don't want to rob banks, but it's the only way that they make a living and the only way that they make money, and they don't want to have to steal from people and hurt people and take their money and do all these things, but they have to, because it's the only thing they know how to do, and it's the only way that they'll survive. That's kind of what her game has felt like. And so it leads to this, you know, that whole emotional detachment narrative, and just so many interesting and complex moments that we don't see with a lot of players, where I definitely want to see more of her. And then she also has had very strong strategic play as well that leaves her, I think, at the top of the season in terms of players to return.
Yes, I completely agree. She's on my Survivor 50 docket for sure. I would love to see her back.
Sweet. Well, I think now we talk about Genevieve. Let's talk about the 4 that are left now that Genevieve and Andy are gone.
Mm-hmm. And what a final 4. What a final 4.
We've got Sue and Teeny, the most memed 2 from the preseason, making it to the final 4.
I didn't even think about that. That's so funny.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
It's kind of iconic.
It really is.
And you've got Sam and Rachel, foes since Gata, somehow have made it to the final 4 together. It is a very interesting group. And we've said this, that it feels like only one of these people has a chance at winning. But I think we should talk through the ways in which the other 3 could win.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way that, and so we have to disconnect ourselves from the fact that Rachel has been given such a clear edit for the winner right now, where it just seems like it would be impossible for anyone else to win. Like, it would be so surprising. My jaw would be on the floor, and people will be very upset if Rachel doesn't win, because it would be so out of left field. Unless, granted, it's a very long episode. Next episode, things could change, but I don't expect that. Rachel would have to be eliminated in fire, right? So that is the scenario that is happening here. So if Rachel's eliminated in fire, we have to assume that for any of these 3 players to win the game, they are the one eliminating her in fire. Is that a fair assumption?
I would assume so, yeah.
And then do we think that they also have to win the immunity challenge and step down and beat her in fire?
I think it depends.
Or could they be put there and beat her?
I think they could be put there and beat her.
Are there
some
of them that could go one way or the other? Like,
I feel very certain that Rachel is making fire, and I think she's going to win.
You don't think she wins the immunity challenge?
Not necessarily. And if she does and then steps down and takes someone out, but I
don't think if she wins the challenge, I do not think she steps down.
No, I know, but I'm saying I think that she, in the past, it has been there have been clues as to who is going to make fire. And for like the past couple episodes, they've been saying, Rachel's so good at fire. Rachel's so good at fire. I don't know why they would keep showing them saying that if she wasn't going to be making fire.
Yeah. Or, I mean, that granted, I mean, they were saying that at Tribal a lot, though, too. So they could just also be bringing that up because they're bringing that up at Tribal Council as they're bringing that up as justification for why they wanted her gone, because they don't think they have a chance at making it past her. But I agree. I do think that odds are, it's 3v1 going into this final immunity challenge. Odds are that one of the three win over her. But she's been kind of killing it.
I was about to say, the three people that are left haven't, well, besides Sue, and the only immunity challenge that Sue won was the one where two people won. Teeny and Sam have not won a single individual immunity challenge. So, like, I mean, Sam has won a reward, but I'm really not confident that either of them are, that any of them are going to beat her.
Yes, but they almost always, or not even almost always, it's basically, I think you could probably say always, make the final challenge is something that is just like super even playing field. Like it's Samotion sort of thing where it's just, they're just putting the balls on the track and it's not even physical. It's just straight mental. And I could see that being something that, like, I think Rachel would be really good at that, given what we've seen from her the rest of the game. I think that she would actually be very good at that challenge. But I don't think that the other players would necessarily be uncompetitive at it either. So, unless it's just straight up a puzzle, which it's not going to be, I can't imagine it's just going to be a puzzle. I don't think that she has that big of an advantage. So, like, odds are she's probably making fire. I agree with you in that. And so, if she's making fire, are there any of these players that you think they do not stand a chance of winning unless they both win the challenge and beat her in fire? Like, they need both of them.
Teeny for sure.
I agree. I think Teeny has to have both.
Yes. And even then, I still don't think she will win.
Yeah, I think Teeny feels maybe the most secure to make the final three out of everyone here. Teeny feels like the one who's going to be brought along.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if Teeny wins the challenge, steps down, beats Rachel in fire, goes to the final three, I think that's still not enough for Teeny, because Teeny doesn't have anything on the resume.
Because I mean, that's what Heidi did in
44 with Carson.
She got one vote.
Yeah,
and it was her number one ally.
Just got Danny.
So
it does. That one was a little different though, because there were two very strong players competing with Heidi in, like, literally the other two parts of the Tika 3 were sitting there. So whereas this feels like there's a lot of parity among the three that are left between Sam, Sue, and Teeny. It doesn't feel like any of them stand above the rest.
I will
astronomically, but Teeny definitely seems like they're a notch below Sue and
something
Sam.
That I really like about this Final Four is they all have played such different games. And
yes, they have, yeah.
And none of them have really been in an alliance with each other long term. Whereas in 46, Charlie and Ben were very close for the entire game. Austin and Dee were very close for the entire game. Carolyn and Jam Jam were very close for the entire game. So this is the first time in a couple seasons that the final three are not going to be debating with each other in terms of who was in more control of their power dynamic. And I think that's going to make for a much more interesting final tribal council, because you really have to sell your game, and you can't just sell, I played it better than this person.
Yeah. It'd be the first one since 43, because 43, the final four was
Gabler,
Jesse, Gabler, Cassidy, and Owen.
Yeah.
Were the final four. And so none of them were in an alliance together. And so it'd be the first one since that. But even that one, Owen and Gabler kind of had a off and on alliance together.
Mm-hmm.
But Owen was just like on the bottom basically the whole game.
Yeah.
So it would be the first one since that season. And it feels even like they're even further apart than that season was.
Mm-hmm.
I think Sue has a couple of things that Sue thinks that she has a couple of things up her sleeve. I'll put it like that. Sue is going to be able to say that she had her idol for the whole game. And one thing she'll be able to say is that she never had to use it, which is a good play if you can phrase it the right way, is that you were always in a position where you didn't have to use the idol. That you were never actually in danger, like you were never in danger. You didn't have to use the idol. That's been a winning play for people before. You had an idol, you were secure, but you never had to use it.
It just depends on if they take it as because you were never a threat.
Yes, it totally depends on the positioning of it and all of that. It is very 50-50 on when that works. But then also being able to say, nobody knew about this except for Caroline. That is going to be a big part, is that it was a secret. Even to Gabe, I think that will win a vote from Gabe. Because I think Gabe's on the fence about a vote for Sue, but that could straight up win a vote from Gabe. The other thing that I think Sue thinks is going to win her votes, but I do not think will, is going to be an age reveal. I think Sue is banking on an age reveal and saying, hey, I'm actually 59 years old. And if I win, I would be the oldest woman ever to win. And I've been out here, with all of you, won an individual immunity challenge, which none of, if in the scenario Sue wins, steps down, takes out Rachel, Sue is sitting there with 2 individual immunity wins. The other 2 don't have any. She can say, I'm 59 years old. I won 2 individual immunities. I kicked ass.
Mm-hmm.
That is her pitch. And that's more compelling than Teeny, for sure. And it is probably more compelling than Sam in that specific scenario. The 2 of them were chosen to go to the final 3 by Sue. They didn't do anything to get there. And so I think Sue has a compelling argument. In that very random specific scenario, I think Sue could win. But it would take all of those dominoes falling into place and her making a very, very good final tribal testimonial. Do you agree with that? Or do you think that there would still be a shot for Sam to beat Sue in that scenario?
I think there's still a shot that Sam beats Sue, but I think it becomes more likely that Sue wins.
Yeah, I think Sue would have the votes in that scenario, but I think it would probably be close. I do think that would be a close one. Then the last scenario would be Sam. If Sam wins immunity, steps down, knocks out Rachel, I think Sam wins.
Yeah.
I don't think Sam would actually have to do any more because people have perceived him as a threat. And
for some reason.
And he has strong respect from the jury and he was a part of Operation Italy. I think that would be enough to get him the win, but he has to win the challenge and has to take out Rachel, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The question I have is, there are 2 other scenarios where Sam makes it to the final 3. He wins the challenge, doesn't take out Rachel, and someone else does. Or he doesn't win the challenge, is put there to take out Rachel, and he does, and then goes to the final 3. In either of those scenarios, do you think that he still would win?
Honestly, yeah. I think he has a very compelling story in the sense that he has also played a very scrappy game from the bottom and has been able to maneuver his way around being perceived as a threat, and has had his number 1 ally taken out of the game, and has been able to maneuver through the game essentially ally-less. I don't know if that's a word.
At his own fault, but yes.
Yeah. But being able to maneuver the game without an ally is very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And staying in the game as long as he has when you don't have an ally is a compelling argument. And he's been on the right side of every single vote, except because technically Rachel blocked his vote. So he was not able to be on the wrong side of the vote of Rachel's idol play.
Yeah.
So he was really never blindsided. Like his plan, his plan didn't come to fruition, but he himself never casted a wrong vote.
And he is the only member of Operation Italy that would be sitting in the final 3. And Andy is so proud of that he's been talking that up a whole lot at Ponderosa.
Mm-hmm.
And has been telling everyone all about Operation Italy. And that very well could end up earning some votes being thrown Sam's way.
Yeah.
So I think that in the bizarre scenario that Rachel does not make it to final 3, it becomes interesting on how Rachel's eliminated. But can we agree on what percent chance, like what is the percent chance that happens?
Because I mean, it all really depends on how good the other people are at fire. Because they're touting Rachel as this master fire starter, and I don't know what the other people's fire abilities are. I would imagine Teeny's fire skills are pretty lackluster.
Yeah, I can't imagine Teeny's very good at fire, which is why I think Teeny's a lock to go to final 3.
Yeah, I would imagine that Sue can make fire. I don't know how good she is, but I would assume that she knows how to make a fire. I think probably the only person who could take Rachel out in fire is Sam, if I had to guess. And I don't know how good he is.
I don't know. I think it's going to be Sam or Sue. I think it's going to be one of those 2. Snook.
Also, hold on. Now that I'm thinking about it, wasn't there a scene in like the very first or second episode where Andy is struggling? He's just like struggling to make a fire, and then Rachel comes in and like starts it instantly. I'm like 99% sure that happened.
No, it was on Lavo. Rome was struggling to make a fire.
Are you sure?
Saul came in.
Are you
and made
sure?
It instantly. Yes, it was Rome, because Rome wanted to do everything. Remember, and Rome wanted to make a fire, and was struggling and struggling and struggling and struggling. Because Gata didn't start with their flint.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
But it was Rome. I think it was Saul who made the fire. But I know it was or no, it was Keyshawn. Keyshawn made the fire. But Rome was the one who was trying to make the fire. Because he was Mr. Survivor, trying to do everything. He was wanting to catch the fish. He was wanting to start the fire. He was wanting to do everything.
Okay.
But yeah, the Gata did not start with their flints. They didn't have that for the first few days until TK.
Yeah.
Then that's when they got theirs back. Yeah, I I think that it is.
I'd say the odds of Rachel winning are greater than 90%.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm 95% confident that Rachel wins.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to go out on a...
I would say a 3... If we're saying 95% Rachel, I'd say 95% Rachel, 3.5% Sam,
I was going to say 3% Sam, 2% Sue.
Sue.
That doesn't add up.
1.5% Sue.
I was like, that math doesn't add up.
0% Teeny.
Yeah, I'd say Teeny doesn't have a shot given what we've seen.
Hey, I'm finally gonna have the winner for the first time.
Congratulations.
Since we've done our drafts.
That's me clapping. Yes, you will have the winner if it's Rachel, unless Sue pulls something miraculous, or it happens to be Teeny for some even bigger miracle.
Yeah.
It's you, because it's gonna be Rachel, or very outside shot Sam.
Mm-hmm.
But probably Rachel. And somehow that, like, it's kind of crazy. We were talking about this last night, that Rachel and Genevieve were your last picks for each of those tribes. And they're both the two players that made it the furthest from each of those tribes for you. And Rachel's probably going to ultimately end up being the winner.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's really surprising the way that the season shaped up and shook out. And that's the way Survivor always is. Like, we wouldn't have expected, based on the preseason stuff in 46, that Charlie was going to be sitting at the final 2. Based on the little bit that we saw of Charlie.
Yeah.
We were clowning him. We didn't think Charlie was going to be very good. And Charlie turned into being quite good. It is just one of those things in Survivor that you can't judge people by your first impression of them. We even saw that this season with Andy in episode 1. And so I think that's one of the really cool things about Survivor. Is there anything else you think we should talk about regarding this week's episode before we go into the second part of this 4-hour Survivor finale?
One thing I did want to mention is in On Fire, Jeff said that CBS came to him about this being 14 episodes. Mm-hmm. It wasn't his decision, which makes me kind of bummed, because then I'm like, okay, then maybe there's not some big twist that's coming that they need to make room for. CBS just wanted them to do it.
Well, I'm bummed that they chose to split the final episode up, and they didn't just give us an extra episode in the middle. Like, I think there was time, like, you could have split basically the episode that we had here for 13 into 2 episodes, into 2 90-minute episodes, one for each vote. And then basically just give us all the episodes in the middle and then the finale, right? Instead of doing this 2-hour finale where you've got the really expedited pre-finale where 2 people go home, and now we're going to go into this finale with a final 4 where no one's going to be voted out. There's just going to be fire and then final tribal and vote for the winner.
Yeah.
So we're going to get to spend a lot of time with the final 4.
But not a lot's really going to be going on.
The challenge, I think we're going to get probably 30 minutes of the challenge. I think we're going to actually get to watch the most of a challenge that maybe we've ever seen on air, at least, which could be pretty cool. We're going to get to see the fire, which I guess is going to be interesting. Maybe we're going to see maybe more of that. And then we will see that whole final tribal. That's really where the bulk of the time is going to go. I would imagine that that's probably an hour of the runtime, almost like 45 minutes of it is going to be final tribal and then them voting for the winner.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be weird. I don't know how they're going to pull it off, but it's going to be very interesting. I think it'll be the first episode of Survivor ever where someone isn't voted out, right? There's never been an episode where someone's not voted out. I can't imagine that there's ever been one. And if you don't count medevac episodes.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that might be accurate.
So it's going to be really interesting, but it will, I guess we'll see what we think of it. They're going to gauge audience sentiment and decide how they want to do it next year.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll get time for a really nice, because they knew before the season started, maybe we get jury speeches back. I'm not saying we will, but I'm saying they knew when they were filming that it was going to be split into two parts and how they were going to break it up.
Jury speeches need to come back anyways.
I agree. But part of the reason I think that they went away was like time, I think is probably part of it, because Jeff talks about it all the time. Time is money with Survivor and all this sort of stuff. It's like, if they're needing to fill up this time, bring back jury speeches. Because they've got more people on the jury now, so you can't really do jury speeches in the same way. But if they've got this time to kill, this could be a perfect time to bring back jury speeches. They already brought back the jury walk. Might as well bring back the speeches. That would be really, really cool if they did that.
Just because it's cool, Jeff isn't going to do it.
I don't know. I guess we'll see. It would be pretty crazy to have a season where we have the jury walk back, we have the auction, and we have no shot in the dark. And they bring back.
We're getting classic Survivor
jury
back.
Speeches.
We're getting classic Survivor back, whether Jeff likes it or not.
And salty people.
We're taking it back for ourselves. We don't need Jeff to do it. We're taking it back for ourselves.
Survivor 40 Several is literally taking back old Survivor by force.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for the finale. I know you're excited for the finale, but we will wait till next week to give our thoughts on that. But for now, we will wrap up this recap episode. If you enjoyed, we would really appreciate a rating/review wherever you listen to your podcasts, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, all that good stuff. Make sure to follow our social media at Idle Talk Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you in the next one.